It was a stormy evening in late autumn, the kind where the wind howls through the trees like a forgotten melody, and the rain turns every sidewalk into a mirror of blurred city lights. Alex Thompson, a quiet architect in his mid-30s, was trudging home from a long day at the office, his coat soaked through and his mind heavy with the weight of unfinished blueprints. He wasn't the type to notice much beyond his own routine: work, solitary dinners, the occasional book to fill the silence of his empty apartment. But that night, something caught his eye in the alley beside his building. A small, trembling shape wedged between a dumpster and a chain-link fence. At first, he thought it was just debris stirred by the gale, but then he heard it. A faint, heartbreaking whine that pierced the downpour. Curiosity pulled him closer, his footsteps splashing in puddles. There, curled into a ball of matted fur, was a puppy no bigger than a loaf of bread. Its coat, a mix of golden and white patches, was plastered to its skinny frame, and its dark eyes locked onto Alex with a mix of fear and desperate hope. No collar, no tags, just raw vulnerability staring back at him. Alex hesitated, glancing around for any sign of an owner, but the alley was deserted. He could have walked away, told himself it wasn't his problem, that animal control would handle it in the morning. But something in those eyes tugged at him, a silent plea that echoed the loneliness he'd been carrying for years since his divorce. With a sigh, he scooped the pup into his arms, wrapping it in his coat. "All right, little one," he murmured, feeling the rapid heartbeat against his chest. "Let's get you out of this mess." Back in his apartment, the warmth hit them like a welcome embrace. Alex set the puppy down on a towel in the kitchen, its tiny paws leaving wet prints on the tile. He rummaged through his cabinets, finding an old bowl for water and some leftover chicken from lunch. Nothing fancy, but it would do. The pup lapped at the water greedily, then devoured the food as if it hadn't eaten in days. Watching it, Alex felt a strange stirring, a flicker of purpose he hadn't known he was missing. He dried the little guy off with a hand towel, noticing how its tail gave a tentative wag. "What am I going to do with you?" He wondered aloud, already scanning his phone for local vets and shelters. But it was late and the storm raged on outside. For tonight, at least, the puppy had a home. As the hours ticked by, Alex set up a makeshift bed in the corner of his living room, an old blanket folded into a nest. The pup explored cautiously at first, sniffing the air, then settled down with a contented sigh. Alex sat on the couch, watching it sleep, its chest rising and falling in rhythmic peace. He thought about his own life, how routines had become walls, keeping out the chaos but also the joy. Finding this stray felt like a crack in those walls, letting in a sliver of light. He decided to call it Scout, after the adventurous character from his favorite childhood book. Scout, he tested the name softly. The pup's ear twitched, but it didn't wake. Exhausted himself, Alex turned off the lights, the sound of rain lulling him into an unusually deep sleep. The next morning dawned clearer, the storm having passed, leaving a crisp freshness in the air. Alex woke to the sound of scratching, persistent, almost urgent. He blinked awake, remembering the events of the night before. Scout was at the back door, pawing at it insistently, whining in a way that suggested more than just a need to go out. Alex's apartment had a small fenced yard, overgrown with weeds since he rarely used it. "Okay, buddy, hold on," he said, clipping on a makeshift leash from an old belt. He opened the door, expecting a quick potty break, but Scout bolted forward with surprising energy, pulling Alex along. The pup sniffed the ground frantically, circling a spot near the far corner of the yard where the grass met a weathered wooden fence. At first, Alex chalked it up to typical dog behavior, maybe scenting a squirrel or buried bone. But Scout started digging, paws flying in a blur, dirt spraying everywhere. "Whoa, easy there!" Alex laughed, kneeling down to pull the pup back. That's when he saw it, something metallic glinting in the soil. Curiosity overtook him. He gently moved Scout aside and used his hands to widen the hole. What emerged wasn't a toy or trash. It was a small, rusted metal box, about the size of a shoebox, half buried under roots that suggested it had been there for years. His heart quickened. How had Scout known? The pup sat beside him, tail thumping, as if proud of the discovery. Alex brushed off the dirt, noticing faint engravings on the lid. Initials, perhaps, and a date from decades ago. He pried it open carefully, the hinges creaking in protest. Inside, wrapped in faded cloth, were letters yellowed with age, a few black and white photographs, and what looked like a locket on a chain. The photos showed a young couple, smiling in front of a house that looked eerily like his own building, though from a bygone era. The letters were addressed to "My dearest Eleanor," filled with poetic declarations of love and promises of a future together. One mentioned hiding this time capsule of our hearts in the yard for their future children to find. Alex's mind raced. His apartment was in an old Victorian converted into units. Could this be from the original owners? But the real shock came as he unfolded the last item. A deed, brittle but intact, listing the property in the name of Eleanor Thompson, his great-grandmother's name. Thompson was common, but the address matched perfectly. Alex sat back on his heels, stunned. He'd inherited the apartment from his late father, who never mentioned any family history tied to it. Scout nudged his hand, licking his fingers as if to say, "See? I knew. How was this possible?" The pup, a stray found miles away, had led him straight to a buried piece of his own heritage. It felt like fate, or something deeper, a connection orchestrated by chance. Digging deeper into his thoughts, Alex realized this discovery could rewrite his understanding of his roots. His family had always been a mystery. His parents divorced young, and his father rarely spoke of the past. Now here was tangible proof of love and legacy unearthed by a lost puppy. He spent the morning poring over the contents, feeling a swell of emotion he hadn't anticipated. The letters spoke of resilience during hard times, the Great Depression it seemed, offering lessons in perseverance that resonated with Alex's own struggles. "In the soil of hardship we plant seeds of hope," one line read, striking him profoundly. Scout curled up nearby, watching with those wise eyes, as if the pup understood the gravity. Inspired, Alex decided to investigate further. He took photos of everything and headed to the local library that afternoon, Scout in tow on a proper leash he'd bought from a pet store. The librarian, an elderly woman with a passion for local history, lit up when he showed her the finds. "This is remarkable," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Eleanor and her husband were pillars in this community. They built that house in 1925, hid a time capsule as a tradition, but it was thought lost when the property was divided." She pulled out old records, confirming the lineage. Eleanor was indeed his great-grandmother. The deed even hinted at a small inheritance clause, unclaimed for generations, a modest trust fund tied to the property, now potentially his. As the pieces fell into place, Alex felt a transformation brewing. This wasn't just about money. It was about connection, to his past, to the pup who'd become his unlikely guide. Back home that evening, he sat with Scout on the couch, the box open before them. "You changed everything, you know that?" he whispered, scratching behind the ears. The pup yawned contentedly, as if the job was done. But the story didn't end there. Word spread through neighbors about the find, and soon, a local historian contacted Alex, offering to help authenticate and preserve the items. It turned into a community event, with people sharing their own family stories, fostering bonds Alex had never sought. Reflecting on it all, Alex realized the true unbelievable part wasn't the buried treasure. It was how one act of kindness rippled outward. By saving Scout, he'd inadvertently saved a part of himself, uncovering roots that grounded him anew. The pup, once lost, had found not just a home, but a purpose, reminding Alex that life's most profound shifts often come disguised as small, furry interruptions. In the days that followed, Alex adopted Scout officially, microchipping him and vowing to pay forward the serendipity. He started volunteering at the local shelter, sharing his tale to encourage others to open their hearts to strays. The experience taught him that vulnerability, whether in a whimpering pup or a guarded human, can be the key to unlocking hidden wonders. And so, as the sun set on that transformative day, Alex looked out his window, Scout asleep at his feet, feeling for the first time in years that his life was no longer just a series of blueprints, but a living, evolving story. The unbelievable had happened not through magic, but through the simple power of compassion. If there's one takeaway from this, it's that sometimes the lost things we find are exactly what we've been searching for all along, guiding us toward wholeness in ways we could never predict.